Divisional round spreads and totals and decide if they're too high, too long, or too low, too short. DraftKings contributors Reid Fowler and Geoff Ulrich. What an absolute pleasure it is to have you here on our screens. Guys, the Bengals just barely beating your Raiders, Reid, and now head to Tennessee as just 3-point underdogs. Is that spread a little too low, Fowler? I mean, maybe there'll be no phantom whistles this time.
Don't get me started. I'm sure we'll get into it on Wednesday's Slate show because there's some stuff to talk about. But I digress. I think this is fine right now. Right? I think it's a little high. I just take a look at what Cincinnati can do. And I know Jeff's going to mention how Tennessee is going to win the Super Bowl, so he's going to say this is way too low. But you're looking at a Cincinnati team that is able to score in bunches and score quickly, right? The one thing that scares me, and I'm sure Geoff, again, is going to talk about this, Tennessee is the number one run blocking offense in DVOA on footballoutsiders.com. And since his run defense is kind of middle of the pack, they're a little suspect against Josh Jacobs, right? 13, I think he averaged about 6.8 yards per attempt. That does scare me. Tennessee should beat Cincinnati if they stick to that game plan of running the ball and then also featuring a guy like A.J. Brown going against Eli Apple. And that is a mismatch, and a match made in heaven for Tennessee. So I'll say it's a little high right now, but I can see why it's creeping up.
All right, Geoff, go ahead. Defend your Titans here because I know that was your preseason bet.
Reid is so wrong. All I was going to say is that I saw an interesting tweet the other day about Nick Foles having more playoff wins than Derek Carr. That's all I was going to say. But, as far as this game goes, I will say that the Titans are getting a little bit disrespected here, but I don't think this line should be egregiously higher. I mean, even at 4, you have to give the Bengals some respect here just because of the quality of the offense. And look, the Titans, I like them as a team. I do think they're going to win this game, and it's mainly going to be because of their defense, which is getting a higher turnover rate, a higher pressure rate. And I think that Joe Burrow still just, one bad throw a game kind of thing. And that could be the difference. And Reid brings up a good point about A.J. Brown. But the Titans are also a team who, they lost to the Steelers 4 weeks ago. I mean, they very close games against Houston and San Francisco. So I don't think that the Bengals should be any bigger than 4-point underdogs here. It's a little bit low for me at -3. I would definitely side with the Titans. Shouldn't say probably. I would definitely side with the Titans. But I don't think that this line is egregious or anything. I think these two teams are still close. I just feel like the Titans, with the consistency they've shown on defensive late, they deserve to be slightly bigger favorites.
Reid, it's now 3.5 on the DK Sportsbook. Does that change anything for you?
Oh, that's what I was talking about. At 3.5, right? You kind of have to side with Cincinnati. Look, this is a Cinderella team, and we see this all the time. We see this with the Packers, the Giants, with Cincinnati. And look, what Jeff's talking about, I think we take so much stock into what these guys do in the regular season and not what they're doing or the foundational, pieces that they have in the playoffs. And Tennessee, look, Mike Vrabel is a fantastic coach, but you also got to give, a lot of credit to what Joe Burrow and what these guys are doing. Yes, they're young, and yes, they probably got a little lucky last week in terms of how they're able to do it. But at the same time, I think you can probably wait if you want to take Cincinnati. You want to take Tennessee, wait until the market kind of adjusts and goes back to believing in Cincinnati at 2.5 or 3 even, or 3 or even 2.5 if it gets below that number.
Yeah, Cincinnati is a public team too with Joe Burrow, so I don't think the spread is going to get too high.
And Burrow 4-0, I believe ATS and straight up over his past 4. Geoff, Bills and Chiefs. They both dominated in their games. They put up 40-plus points. Is 55-point game total, is that actually too low?
I wanted to be curmudgeonly Pierce here and be like, this one's too low. Defenses are good. We got to give them some respect here. It's winter. But, I mean, the Bills are coming off a perfect offensive game. I mean, legitimately, they did not make a mistake against the Patriots, who are a very good defense. So even if the Chiefs win this game, are the Bills going to score less than 24 points? I don't think so. Even if the Bills play at 70% of their capacity from last week, it's really tough for me to see the Chiefs defense, which has allowed some big games of late. I mean, 34 points to the Bengals. They even allowed the Steelers to come back and post 21 in a game where they could have just shut them down. I think there will be opportunity here for whichever offense is trailing to put up points. And I think that's the big factor because the winner here is probably going to need to get to at least 30. So maybe you get stuck at a number like 54 and this one goes under, but I think at 55, it's a little bit too low right now. And I think you'll probably see this creep up to 56.
The Patriots defense was a bunch of frauds, dude. Reid, 55-point game total here. What do you think? Too high, too low?
Patriots team is a bunch of frauds.
Yeah, there he is. There he is.
We were saying all along, like, who did they play? Anyway, they're not in the playoffs. Let's stop talking about them because they don't matter right now. Like 50, Geoff saying 55 is too low is crazy. But Jeff's par for the course is crazy. So I'm not surprised at all. Look, the over hit in their first matchup this season, and that was set at 56.5.
Last year in the AFC Championship game too, Reid.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, this is the last thing the Bills want to do, right, with the Chiefs, and vice versa, is get into a shootout, because then it gets to the point where, you can't really control your destiny. It probably comes down to whoever has the ball last. I do think what's interesting about that last matchup, guys, is that Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes had really good games on the ground. Allen, of course, had 11 for 59, but Mahomes had 8 for 61. So I'm not saying that that's going to be the focal point of their offense, but I will say that both of these defenses has gotten a lot better since the last time these two teams met. And to what Geoff has been saying ad nauseum is that they finally have a run game in Devin Singletary. So why go away from that? Everything went perfect for the Bills, like you mentioned, Emerson. And the Chiefs really put up a really good performance. And so you're getting this, I think, at the very top of the market. Geoff mentioned it. If it's at 54, 53, that's kind of where I see this game coming, because neither of these teams want to get into a shootout with the other team.
I mean, it's a healthy line for sure. And the Chiefs have hit the over in 6 straight games. Bills have hit the over in 5 of their last 7 games on the road.
And to Emerson, sorry to cut you off, though. Bills, though, again, I'm probably, contradicting my point here. 3-0 hitting the over when the lines close at 50 or over. And Kansas City is 7-4-1 in those matchups where the total has been over 50. So take that for what it's worth, too. But, again, those are regular season numbers.
First NFL playoff game ever where both quarterbacks threw for 5 touchdowns in the previous round. Let's go to the NFC. Packers 6-point favorites. Packers only beat the Niners here as they welcome in the 49ers by 2 back in week 3. So is this too high, Reid?
Yeah. And what's this hate with San Francisco? Pierce and his curmudgeon self, when I was watching that first part of the segment, saying that this is not a good team and they got lucky. Like, San Francisco put up 3 field goals in the first half that could easily have been touchdowns. And Dallas was only in that game because they got lucky on a call, right? So the fact that San Francisco is getting a little bit disrespected in this market is the reason why I think this is too high. Like, the Packers are 7-3 ATS in their last 10 playoff games, but the 49ers are 4-0 ATS, guys, in their last 4 divisional playoff games. So when you take a look at what they're able to do, and when you have a running back like Eli Mitchell, boy, this guy was a steal, feeling like the steal of the draft right now in the later rounds. When you can have that type of player in the running game, and Deebo Samuel has had 5 times more attempts in last week's game as opposed to the first time these two teams match up, guess what Green Bay can't do well? They cannot defend the run whatsoever. And Jimmy Garoppolo is a player that, and sorry to contradict Steve as well, it's a guy who's come back against teams like the Green Bay defense. He did it against the Rams to go into the playoffs. They were down 17-0 going into the second half. So what these guys are saying in the first segment was absolute cockamamie. And you take a look at what the San Francisco team can do, I think this is too low, or excuse me, too high.
Yeah, 49ers have dominated Green Bay with the run in previous seasons and could do so again. Geoff, Aaron Rodgers 0-3 in the playoffs in his career against San Francisco. San Fran, his kryptonite.
They have put some beatings down on the Packers. I really worry this is like the game where we all just like San Francisco's getting disrespected, and then the Packers just blow out the 49ers. I actually don't think this line is too high. I think that it should be like 5.5 was fine. At 6, you start to wonder. If it got over 6, I definitely say it was too high. I think the Packers are the best team in the NFL, and I've thought that since the start. I think they're far more consistent and complete. They've shored up their secondary. They're getting Darius Smith back for this game. Who in the San Francisco secondary is going to stop Davante Adams? That's the question for me, and that's what really has me wondering why we think this one's too high. I don't think it is too high. I think it's right where it should be. Now, at the same time, I mean, if I think it's right where it should be, it's not like I'm running out of my way to bet the Green Bay Packers, because everything Reid said is right. This San Francisco offense is very good at coming back. They will continue to move the ball regardless of the score. But I think this line is fine. I'm just not sure if I necessarily want to take it with the Packers yet. So this is just like one where I'm going to give like the boring answer and say this one's probably right where it should be. Maybe you don't go out of your way to like bet the heavy public favorite Packers, but I'm going to give the Green Bay some credit here, because all I've heard this week is San Francisco is going to make this game close. They've been the far less consistent team of these two, and the Packers are coming off a week of rest with the far better quarterback. So I'm going to say this one's just right.
Yeah, and I also mentioned earlier in the show with Stephen Pierce too that the health of Nick Bosa is going to be absolutely crucial in this game, because less pressure on Rodgers. Yes, he can pick apart that secondary, which you mentioned, Geoff, is the weakest part of that 49ers defense. Rams and Bucks, though, both rolling their wild card matchups. Total set at 48.5. So bookmakers here don't expect each offense to put up 30 plus again. Is this total too high or too low, Geoff?
I mean, I don't know how you look at a Tampa Bay Buccaneers game with a 48.5 total going up against another offense in the Rams, who we just saw put up 30 points against a supposedly a playoff average defense in Arizona, and you don't take the over. I have no case to take the under in this game. We're not even like in a Green Bay setting where we can sit here and say, well, the weather might be a factor. It's probably not going to be a factor because we're in Florida. So yeah, 48.5 with the Rams and the Bucks. I mean, I personally still think the Rams are a team is very gettable, and we know the Bucks are going to be throwing the ball regardless of score here. So I will take the over here. I think 48.5. Again, you'll probably see this one creep up as the week goes on.
All right, Reid, what do you think here? Dude, this squared up back in week 3 in LA, and Rams were able to pull out the 34-24 win.
Yeah, I just like to call up the receipts from last week where Geoff verbally accosted me about taking the Rams over the Cardinals, and it was an absolute embarrassment for Geoff. Yep. So I appreciate the two shots.
I went 2-3 last week, fully admitted on the show, but the 3 losses I had were
Steelers,
Pittsburgh, Philly, and Arizona, and it feels like I went about 0-10 because those teams lost by 30 points. So
we're not even counting Russell Henley.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much.
Better just watch it there, pal. Okay?
Yeah, we'll get to that in a little bit. But again, the case to be made, Geoff, is the Rams are 2-4 hitting the over when they're outside or not in a dome. But I do like the over with you as well, because I like to take a look at this Rams offense, and it matches up fairly decently against this defense. But Emerson, you mentioned in that first block, if Whitworth is not there, that scares you quite a bit, because he is a focal point not just of that offensive line, but the leader in that offensive line as well. So that does scare you a little bit. But even then, I like attacking the Bucks team total as well at 25.5. They've gone over this number fairly easily since week 12. And the Rams defense, this is why Geoff liked the Cardinals so much. They're a little bit banged up in the secondary. And again, this whole idea that the Bucks don't have anybody on offense to throw to. Mike Evans just caught 1,000 passes for 1,000 yards last week.
Again, one of my worst calls last week.
It's completely fine. So I like this one to go over as well.